He's the baddest of the bad, the most evil Walt Disney has ever created.
Philby was in fine form, back to himself, alert from the sleep he'd gotten, and able to think more clearly than either Maybeck or Finn. They waited in line for the park to the conservation station. Charlene remained behind in the jungle just outside the bat enclosure. She blended in there well, and having found a log to stand on with her stilts, could keep an eye on the activities backstage by peering over the top of the wall. The back doors of the ice truck had been shut, Maleficent inside. As far as Charlene could tell, before entering the back of the truck, neither Maleficent nor the monkeys and apes had realized the cages were empty. The tarps were used to contain the captive DHIs and to block their projections from showing, had also served to fool their captors. Once the line was moving, Maybeck, Finn, Willa, and Philby separated for the ride out to the conservation station. They each took a place on the long benches amid the park guests, all on different train cars. Summoned by Amanda, they were anxious to rendezvous and find out what had her so overheated. As the train arrived at Rafi Key's Planet Watch, the kids split up. Park visitors trudged up the long path toward the conservation station. They were a team now, protective of one another and concerned for each other's safety. These kids, who had once been strangers, were now anything but, brought together by a common enemy and the strange manifestations of a technology gone wrong. To remind them of their previous lives would have been foolish, for they could barely remember a time when falling asleep did not mean crossing over into a strange world, and where a white-haired old man had not controlled their shared fate. Finn, who'd taken up the rear, entered the facility and joined the others in a huddle by the restrooms.
I'm starving.
Later.
What's so important?
Finn asked Amanda, who had abandoned her viewing station. The crowd had thinned as a veterinarian demonstration had begun at the central display window. A snake had eaten a golf ball and was undergoing surgery. She unfolded the original page of the diary and pointed out the ape on crutches.
It's a tattoo. A washable tattoo for the children. It's given to them after the private tours of the vet clinic. I think our passes will get us back there, but I didn't want to leave my station for too long. And since the veterinary clinic means animals, I thought it was better to get some help and maybe do this as a team.
Agreed.
A tattoo? What about Chernbog? What about the two apes we left spinning donuts back at the lodge? Who cares about some bleeping tattoo?
If it's in the diary, then it's a part of the puzzle she left us. That makes it significant. Amanda's right. We have to pursue it.
Says the one who just got a couple hours of sleep.
I know this may sound foolish, but I feel it's important. I really do. I wouldn't have called you out here otherwise. I know how hard you're all working to help Jez. How much risk you're taking. I can't tell you how I appreciate it. I have no right to ask you to do anything more.
That's true.
Shut up.
I'm just agreeing with her.
You're being a Nimrod, and you know it.
A tattoo.
Everything in the diary is proved out. The tiger and lion were DHIs. She drew the lightning hitting the castle days before it occurred.
Change Rob.
She reviewed Finn's phone, called to Rob for Amanda, and the discovery of the Chernabog anagram.
And that too.
The apes.
And now the tattoo. Okay, I get it. So what now?
I'm going back there into the vet clinic.
And I'm going with you.
I can take over the viewing station.
Willa and I will stand guard. Our DS at the ready.
What's the code word if there's a problem?
Give it a rest, Whitman.
Chernabog.
All eyes fell on him.
At least that way we'll all understand if it's serious.
Finn swiped his ID in the card reader. A small light changed to green. An even smaller light went off in his brain. What if the overtakers had figured out the kids were using fake IDs and were tracking them through the use of their cards? He shook it off. He tried the doorknob and the door opened. He and Amanda stepped through, leaving the sounds of activities behind them. The hallway he found himself in reminded Finn of the veterinarian's office where his mother volunteered part-time. It also served to remind him of his mother and the fact that he hadn't called home. Yet. He'd messed up. Soon his parents would be at Blizzard Beach looking for him. They were going to be furious. He wondered if any of the other kids were in the same predicament. One thing was certain. Time was running out. The park would remain open only for another hour or so. Jez's chances of being freed were quickly diminishing. He knew that no matter how they tried, he and Amanda still looked like kids. Tired, even exhausted kids, but kids nonetheless. There was no getting around it, and he had no idea if unaccompanied kids his age were allowed backstage. With this in mind, he signaled Amanda to hurry, and they moved down the hallway with an eye out for some place to hide. Thankfully, most of the doors had glass panels allowing them to see inside. They passed an examination room and another filled with medical equipment. There was one door marked private, and another with stickers and cartoon clippings taped to it. It was this door Finn tried first. Inside was a single table and some vending machines, an employee lounge. It was empty. They ducked inside, both wide-eyed and slightly out of breath due to the excitement.
I'm terrified.
Me too. We have no idea what we're looking for.
No, but she must have dreamed about that tattoo. That has to mean something.
But what? The tattoos are given out to kids who take the private tours. Maybe there's something on the tour we're supposed to see.
That's gotta be it. You're a genius.
Hardly.
Finn felt his face warm. He mumbled under his breath, wondering how a guy like Maybeck could carry himself so confidently. There was noise in the hallway, and both of them looked instinctively for a place to hide. But the employee lounge offered them nothing. A few lockers, all padlocked. A text message appeared in both their DSs.
The green one just left the ice palace.
Maleficent just left the ice truck.
Yeah, I saw that. But what's it mean?
No idea, but it can't be good.
He advised bracing himself for whoever was out there to come through the door. Instead, he saw a woman dressed in green nursing scrubs leading 2 adults and a string of 4 or 5 kids down the hallway. A tour.
Okay, here's the thing. Try to look like you belong here. I've got an idea.
A moment later, he and Amanda were in the hallway, trailing only a few feet behind the family. For anyone seeing them, they would appear to be a group. The nurse busy with her explanations, a memorized tour she probably did too often, seemed to pay little attention to those at the back of the pack. The guide pointed out the purpose of several of the rooms, explaining in some detail about the care and attention lavished on the animals in the park. This facility was so advanced, it was used not only for Disney-owned animals, but for all sorts of wild animals rescued throughout the state. Finn found himself caught up in the tour as Amanda tugged on his shirt. They stopped, and the tour went along without them. On the wall was a corkboard. Pinned to the board, it was photographs of some of the recovered animals, including a gorilla with a broken leg. There were maps and brochures tacked on the board as well.
The tattoo!
She was right. The similarity of the subjects were unmistakable. A photo of a gorilla with a broken leg and a tattoo sketch of the same thing.
But how does it help us?
I don't know, but we're in the right place.
Finn studied the rest of the stuff thumbtacked to the corkboard. One of the items was a very large satellite photo of the entire animal kingdom. Finn spent a good deal of time, probably too much according to his mother, on Google Earth. He loved everything about satellite photos. Using the image, it took him only seconds to establish where they were, and a complex of buildings near the top right of the photo at the end of a loop that was obviously the train line. Then he saw them, an M near the bottom and a C near the top. For a moment, his breath caught. It felt as if a bone were stuck in his throat. His hands were moving before he knew exactly what he was doing. He pulled the thumbtacks from the four corners of the satellite photo.
How stupid could we be?
Finn, what's going on?
Hey, you can't do that. Put that back.
Finn glanced to his right. The man was a long way off at the end of the hallway.
Finn,
They're both here. The M she wrote in her diary, and under the C.
He pointed to the satellite photo, which he turned counterclockwise. The man picked up his pace, heading toward them.
Hey!
It wasn't under the C, S-E-A, but under the letter C.
Turning the photo, he traced the prominent shape at the top of Asia. It was very clear a big bold C, formed by an arched bridge.
She's here. Jez is under the C on the map.
oh my gosh, you found her.
It's the Tiger Yards. Maybeck and I walked right by there.
The man was nearly upon them. Finn kept hold of the satellite photo, already folding it as he turned to Amanda.
I think it's time we run.
Finn and Amanda turned the corner. At the far end of the hallway glowed a red exit sign. Finn was already in the process of texting a D-Gamer message.
Chernabog.
The green fairy rounded the far corner, coming between Finn and the exit sign. She held a black kitty in her arms. She set the kitty down, waved her hand over it, and it stretched and grew to the size of a panther. The man pursuing Amanda and Finn skidded to a stop.
Silly boy. Won't you ever learn to mind your own business?
Who are you?
Pest!
She waved her finger at the man. The panther took off, running past Amanda and Finn, and chased the man around the corner. Finn pushed the fear from his thoughts and drove away his anger.
Examination room. Get the others. We'll meet up at the trek.
I'm not going anywhere. Not without Jez.
He couldn't allow her defiance to ruffle him. Above all, he had to clear his mind of any frustration, resentment, or ill will towards others. As he did, he felt the familiar tingling sensation in his toes and fingers, and he knew it was starting, knew without looking that he was crossing over. In the past, he'd only been able to sustain his waking DHI form for a matter of a minute or two. Somehow he knew it would have to be longer this time, that this was to be a test of his strength. He suspected that by becoming his DHI, he risked the Sleeping Beauty syndrome. This was uncharted territory, but he had to do something to counter Maleficent's power.
Go!
No, I'm staying.
Maleficent drew her scrawny hands toward her face, her fingers twitching, her lips bubbling with an incantation. Finn could sense a spell coming, but he wouldn't allow himself to fear it. Even his frustration with Amanda for not listening had to be ignored. He would be no help to her if Maleficent's spell affected him as well.
You have a powerful master.
Finn called down the hall. He watched as Maleficent's face became rubbery with surprise and wrinkled with concern.
You know nothing of my master.
More than you think. Is it control over the animal kingdom that Chernabog wants?
Maleficent cringed at the mention of the name. It was as if Finn had spoken a sacred secret. She curled her hands into a tight ball, and Finn could feel it coming out.
Look out!
He shouted at Amanda. He turned to warn her. Amanda was gone, vanished, no longer by his side. Maleficent hurled a blinding ball of energy down the hall, about the size of a softball. It spun throughout the air, throwing off sparks like a tiny blazing sun, and looked as if it would burn up anything in its path.
Duck!
Finn glanced up to see her floating horizontally near the ceiling. But it was too late for Finn to duck. The burning ball arrived and passed right through him. It exploded at the end of the hall, hitting a tile wall and erupting into a cloud of black smoke that rose to the ceiling. The smoke crept toward a blinking sensor mounted in the ceiling.
But how?
I told you Jez and I have unusual abilities.
You can fly?
Not exactly. I can levitate.
She sank then and returned to her feet. Finn knew this discussion would have to wait until later. Maleficent twisted her ugly fingers. A cage of blue-white lines surrounded Finn and Amanda. Finn wasn't scared of the laser cage. His DHI stepped right through it, coming closer to Maleficent. Amanda floated off her feet and swam through the air. Slipping through her grip between the electric bars, she sank back to the floor.
Or is it the other way around? Is it that the animal kingdom controls him and you're going to save Chernobog, to free him? His powers are limited here. Is that it?
Maleficent took a step back, away from Finn. It was the first time he ever sensed an ounce of retreat in her. He savored the moment. By gloating, he briefly lost his DHI.
My master's powers are anything but limited. Just you wait.
She threw an arrow of flame at Finn. His cherishing Maleficent's retreat had cost him more than half his DHI. He was half kid, half light now, and he turned his back against the oncoming arrow. He unknowingly offered her his mortal half. Seeing this, Amanda leaped in front of the arrow. The arrow stuck in her chest and was totally absorbed. Her arms and legs glowed as she sank to the floor. Maleficent grinned an evil grin.
Looks like your girlfriend shouldn't play with fire.
Amanda lay unconscious on the floor at Finn's feet, a burn mark on her shirt. His fear removed him from the DHI state and exposed him to Maleficent's powers. But something else overcame him, a wild pent-up anger that he could no longer control. He charged the witch. A wide-eyed Maleficent seemed to sense her situation. As her lips muttered another incantation, she was too late. Finn hit her with a body block, his momentum slamming her against the wall and pinning her there. He brought his hands to her throat. Her skin was ice cold.
Release her this instant. You bring her back, or so help me.
He tightened his grip. Her cold skin felt like nothing he'd ever felt. Maleficent's sickly green skin turned yellow. He was choking the life from her. She had no voice, no incantations.
Release Amanda.
He tightened his grip. Maleficent's eyes bulged. She waved her hand. Amanda coughed and sat back up, coming back to consciousness.
Are you alright?
Amanda coughed hard but nodded. Finn squeezed even tighter.
Tell Chernobog it's over. He will never regain his power. The Overtakers are through.
He threw her to the floor, turned, and ran, grabbing Amanda by the hand just as the smoke reached the smoke alarm.
You saved my life. Maleficent was scared of you.
I was mad?
I didn't know you cared.
Amanda teased him just as they opened an emergency door and sprinted outside.
Who says I do?
Boys.